I'm just going to read it because we don't have time to do everything, because this is Govardhan Puja and there's a lot to say. Ye Brahmanan Mai Diya Kshipto Shriyantat Yantas Tasyadrida Smita Sudokshita Padma Pakrita Vanyanuraga Kalayat Majagrinanta Sambodhayanti Aham Ivaham Uparatastai. On the other hand, they captivate my heart, who are gladdened in heart, who, their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles, respect the Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as the son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It has been observed in many instances in the Vedic scriptures that when the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas curse someone in an angry mood, the person who is cursed does not take it upon himself to treat the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas in the same way. There are many examples of this. For instance, the sons of Kuvera, when cursed by the great sage Narada, did not seek revenge in the same harsh way, but submitted. Here also, when Jai and Vijay were cursed by the four Kumaras, they did not become harsh towards them, rather they submitted. That should be the way of treating Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. One may sometimes be faced with a grievous situation created by and should be treated as representatives of Narayan. Of course, those who are unprotected are mentioned here, but the definition of this phrase is clear from the Shastras. The poor man should not be unprotected, but the Brahmana should especially be treated as the representative of Narayan and should be worshipped like him. It is specifically said that to pacify the Brahmanas, one's face should be lotus-like. A lotus-like face is exhibited when one is adorned with love and affection. In this respect, the example of the fathers being angry at the son, and the sons to pacify the father with smiling and sweet Lalita, Shri Vishakavitamscha. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandho, Jagatpate, Gopisha, Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hari Priye, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasandubhya Eva cha, Patitanam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. On the other hand, they captivate my heart, were gladdened in heart, and who, their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles, respect the Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. Very great weight, these words, because they're spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality, the source of all other personalities. Interpersonal dealings. So who will be more expert in understanding the complexities of how all different types of persons and all different statuses and conditions of life should interact with each other in the most smooth and orderly way, which will result in the ultimate good, Shreya Uttamam, topmost good for everyone concerned. That is the Varnashram Dharma system of which the Brahmanas are the chief. The tendency is for those in the leadership or the Kshatriya position to become puffed up and proud of their position and think that they can lord it over everyone, and when they and with ulterior motivation behind it, and when that ultimately reaches the point where they try to lord it over the Brahmanas, then that creates dharmasya glani, where the Lord has to personally come and rectify the situation. We see in the pastimes of Parashuram that he annihilated the Kshatriya class thrice 7 times with his keenly sharpened chopper, 27 times. The intricacy of that story we don't have time to get into, but the basic point is that the Brahmanas, they are meant to be the mouth, the spokesperson for the Supreme Lord, also the head of the Lord, the thinking. If the head is in good order and not bad, Prabhupada says in one place, then the whole body will be in a good condition. And then again, when the Brahmanas, they become puffed up and proud and not act actually as the mouthpiece of the Supreme Lord, or do or think properly as the Lord would want them to think and consider, then just as Maharaj Shringi, the son of Shonaka Rishi, wanted to curse Maharaj Parikshit for a slight and not very serious infraction, curse him with the death penalty, that allowed for Kali to enter into this world. And Prabhupada, this says in the first canto, end a chapter of happy history. Just see my power, I will curse this most wretched Maharaj Parikshit, who such care and attention was given that the last heir of the glorious family of devotees, the Pandavas, would be left to be the heir apparent and ruler of this world. So much care and attention that the Lord himself entered into the womb of his mother Uttara to save him from the Brahmastra weapon. It is observed in many instances in the Vedic scriptures that when the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas curse someone in an angry mood, the person who is cursed does not take it upon himself to treat the Brahman or Vaishnava in the same way. So that is described, and we're chanting every day, the cursing of the Manigriva and Manigriva and Nalakuvara, the sons of Kuvera, the treasurer of the demigods, very rich and opulent. He did so for their ultimate benefit. You can read in the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, the punishment should be apt so that these two will get ultimate benefit. So not only did they stand as trees, but they stood as trees in the courtyard of Maharaj Nanda. And Krishna himself, because of his relationship with Narada Muni, I have no relationship with these two, but because Narada Muni wants me to, so therefore the whole pastime took place, and they became purified and elevated on their goal to ultimately Shreya Uttamam, topmost benefit. So it was there to their credit. They weren't that puffed up. So the Brahmanas, they're not necessarily always going to utter harsh words and curses, but they're meant to give correctional direction. So when we don't want to take the advice or the instruction or the indication from more qualified, spiritually advanced persons, that is our downfall. That is our disqualification. And ultimately, it's not so much that the Brahmanas are going to judiciate or to figure it all out, but Krishna, seeing the trepidation and problem that his Brahman devotees are put into by the failure or inability or just plain calculated, motivated disobedience of such persons, as Krishna himself thinks how to. Krishna will ultimately figure out how to disentangle the whole knotted false ego of such a person. But it'll take some time. And it will also be in such a way that it could have been more pleasant, it could have been a better situation if such personalities had gone about things in the right way. So Brahmins, they choose their words very carefully, and they choose how to speak those words according to time, place, and person and circumstance also very carefully. This we should keep in mind. When Jai and Vijay were cursed by the 4 Kumaras, they did not become harsh towards them, rather they submitted. That should be the way of treating Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. So all of these things become very responsible. So from our side, the devotee doesn't think that he's qualified to speak the words of correction and proper direction. And many times it's that if the devotee who's actually in a qualified position to speak the words and give the direction speaks them, then they won't be heeded very properly, and therefore the devotee doesn't want to waste his valuable time. Even Krishna says the conditioned soul performs activities and becomes attached, and so the Lord advises those in knowledge not to try to correct them and thereby waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they know the inner purpose of the Lord. Therefore, they take all kinds of risks in approaching the conditioned soul to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. So therefore, Lord Chaitanya, understanding the complexity of the age of Kali Yuga and the plight of the conditioned soul, causeless unwillingness to surrender, has created such a sublime dharma for this age, the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, done by his actual pure devotees on the platform of love, of actual love of Godhead. Who would refuse to take part in a function where singing and dancing and refreshment are administered? Everyone will feel the benefit of such a thing. Those who formerly criticized Lord Chaitanya now freely and happily joined in his Sankirtan movement, saying, "This is very good." So that is not ordinary chanting and dancing. It is Golokera Premadana Harinam Sankirtan. So chanting on the platform of love of Godhead is actually the ultimate goal for every devotee in the Krishna consciousness movement. And the means and the ends are one and the same. Don't think that this chanting and dancing won't lead to the desired success. It will, if you do it. So taking part in the Sankirtan movement is not just meant to purify all the fallen conditioned souls. It's meant to purify and elevate it to the highest position all the members or desiring members, those who wish to become actual members of Lord Chaitanya's movement, by actually engaging in the process that Lord Chaitanya actually came to give and did himself. And then expanded from that is the distribution of the knowledge of what the chanting and dancing is actually all about, transcendental book distribution, which is a more difficult service in a sense, because approaching people and induce them to take Krishna consciousness, many or most will refuse because of their very deep conditioned false ego and false pride. And it takes a lot of humility to be rebuffed and to be insulted and to be treated neglectfully by such persons. But the diffusion and distribution of the holy name, no one can refuse unless they're deaf or they actively plug up or cover their ears. Sometimes one may be faced with a grievous situation created by a Brahmin, but instead of meeting him with a similar mood, one should try to pacify him with a smiling face and mild treatment. So the advanced devotee, who could actually see where everyone is at, will very, very rarely, if ever, create a grievous situation or a situation where the persons that he's speaking with or trying to correct or wanting to come to a more proper platform, they won't be able to properly follow the instruction or reciprocate and therefore make offense. Those in the position of being the spiritual master, they are very, very cautious to say something to the disciple, because if the disciple doesn't follow, then they're guilty of making offense. More offense than just by doing whatever they're doing anyway. Shrutakirti describes in his memories, and it's there in his book, What is the Difficulty? His 2.5 years spent with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada did not like to grant permission for devotees to get divorced. Once married, that's it, and it should be a lifelong commitment, or to the time of retirement or renunciation, whichever comes first. So one devotee is asking for a divorce and to remarry someone else. And Prabhupada said, yes, that is all right. And Shrutakirti was very perplexed by this and waited for the right time to ask Prabhupada, which was during the evening massage. And Prabhupada immediately, without just jump, yes, I gave him permission, because he was going to do it anyway. So if I said no and he went ahead and did it anyway, the offense would have been greater. So Brahmins, they're the most kind and merciful. They're in the topmost position because their position is a very difficult position, especially in this age of Kali Yuga. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya is the only shelter and the only savior in this Kali Yuga for everyone. And Prabhupada debunks this foolish, the Drita Narayan idea was propagated by Mahatma Gandhi, for one, that the poor man should be accepted as a representative of Narayan. Well, that might be like a sympathetic idea to show some compassion and plight and help the so-called poor man, but it is completely sentimental and not at all shastrically correct. That Narayan is in the heart of every living entity, and every living entity should be respected. In the Vedic literature, we do not find the poor men should be treated as representative of Narayan. Of course, those who are unprotected are mentioned here, but the definition of this phrase is clear from the Shastras. The poor man should not be unprotected, but the Brahmin should especially be treated as the representative of Narayan. That in part was caused by the as Prabhupada quotes from a particular Shastra in the first canto, that the demons, wanting to upset things in this Kali Yuga, found a way to take their birth in so-called Brahmin families and created this caste Goswami, birth by hereditary caste right nonsense of the Brahmins, thereby actually crippling the actual Brahmin position, which later especially Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, with spiritual machete in his hand, chopped down the jungle of this nonsense. There's that 1911 victorious meeting that he had, and he later composed a book, Brahman and Vaishnava, is based on that, quoting from many Shastras that it is a position of qualification which anyone can acquire if they undergo the proper process, not one of birthright. This ultimately led to the division of India and Pakistan, Muslims and so-called Hindus, which the tension is still there today and can flare up at any moment. That's a long story in and of itself. To pacify the Brahmanas, one's face should be lotus-like. A lotus-like face is exhibited when one is adorned with love and affection. In this respect, the example of the fathers being angry at the son, and the son's trying to pacify the father with smiling and sweet words, is very appropriate. Hare Krishna. So, Srila Rupa Goswami, in the Nectar of Instruction, in describing the ascension of realms superior one to the other, ultimately concludes that Govardhan Hill, in which is enclosed Radha Kund, is the topmost place. Why? Because it's the personal select place where Sri Radha and Krishna and Balaram, and all of their eternal, most confidential, beloved associates have their most sublime, relishable, and desirable pleasure pastimes. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami writes in Stavavali, O Govardhan, O King of Mountains, O hill whose nectarian name, the best of Hari's servants, flows from the moon-like mouth of Sri Radha, O hill that the Vedas declare to be the tilak marking of Braja, please grant me a residence near to you. Śrimad Bhāgavatam, the gopis themselves say, this is in the 21st chapter, 18th verse, of all the devotees, this Govardhan hill is the best. O my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balaram, along with their cows, calves, and cowherd friends, with all kinds of necessities, water for drinking, very soft grass, caves, fruits, flowers, and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respects to the Lord. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, Govardhan Hill appears very jubilant. 10:21:18. Actually, Srimati Radharani herself praises Govardhan Hill as the very best servant, Hari Dasya Varya, of Lord Krishna in the following words. So it's Radharani herself who speaks this verse. As the best servant, Govardhan Hill provides Krishna and Balaram and the inhabitants of Vrindavan with all necessities of life: cool, fragrant drinking water from its many waterfalls, pure honey, mango juice, pilo juice, wonderful varieties of herbs, roots, fruits, creepers, and fresh flowers. Govardhan also provides various minerals and precious gems that the cowherd boys use to decorate Krishna and Balaram and themselves as well. This sacred hill also provides deep caves where Krishna and Balaram rest and take shelter against the rain and the scorching sun. Krishna also enjoys many intimate loving pastimes with Srimati Radharani in these same caves. There is one cave that is still existing. It is called I forget. I'm sorry. But it is also the place where it is at the tail end of Govardhan, and one can still see it today. Govardhan Hill also provides a special kind of soft Raghava Pandit, fragrant grass that makes the cows strong and healthy. This grass also helps the cow's milk production, which is used to make pure ghee for the sacrificial fire and cooking. The milk is also turned into butter, yogurt, cheese, and many amazing varieties of milk sweets. Considering that milk is the economic backbone of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, it is no wonder that Lord Krishna also advised the Brajabasis to stop the sacrifice to Indra and worship Govardhan Hill himself. So this Govardhan Puja, it is the beginning of the Leela that you read in the Krishna book, that Maharaj Nanda was preparing the traditional sacrifice to Maharaj Indra, who supposedly sends the rains. He's sending the rains, but he's empowered to do so by Krishna himself. And Krishna he convinced Maharaj Nanda and the cowherd community to divert their sacrifice to worship Govardhan Hill. So what we're performing today, Govardhan Puja, of that worship of Govardhan, for 7 days held aloft Govardhan Hill. And Krishna was crowned, was called Govinda, and the Gopastami ceremony in 8 days, Astami, was performed at the conclusion when Krishna put the Govardhan Hill back, the rain stopped, and everything was made correct. So it's, quote unquote, a long Leela which begins today. 6 years ago they had big celebrations in Vrindavan commemorating that visit 500 years prior. He refused to climb Govardhan Hill because he saw that Govardhan was non-different from Lord Krishna. At the time of the Anakut ceremony, Krishna declared that he was non-different from Govardhan Hill. So here's the English translation to 10:24:35 through 36. Krishna then assumed an unprecedented huge form to instill faith in the cowherd men, declaring, "I am Govardhan mountain." He ate the abundant offerings. Together with the people of Braja, the Lord bowed down to Govardhan Hill, thus in effect offering obeisances to himself. Then he said, "Just see how this hill has appeared in person and bestowed mercy upon us." Because Govardhan Hill is non-different from Krishna himself, the rocks, Shilas from Govardhan, are worshipable, just like a deity of Krishna. In fact, the stones known as Govardhan Shilas do not need to be installed, as they are already considered to be worshipable deities. Many great devotees have worshipped these Shilas from Govardhan: Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Govardhan Hill should be envisioned to be in the shape of a peacock resting with its head tucked into its side. Its face is considered to be Kusham Sarovar. Its neck, Manasi Ganga. That is, just as the name suggests, that Maharaj Nanda and the residents of Vrindavan were going to go on pilgrimage to bathe in the Ganges, and Krishna said, "Why are you doing that? You're already here in Vrindavan. I will bring the Ganges here." By his thinking, Manasi Ganga, he created Manasi Ganga, which is a large lake in the center of what is now Govardhan town. Its mouth, Mukaravinda, there at the Manasi Ganga lake, and authorized by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, the actual mouth of Govardhan. Its two eyes, Radhakund and Shamakund, the beginning of its tail, and the very end. At the end, Punchari Kund, where there are two very nice kunds there. And that is the place, if anyone has been there, the temple of Lord Nrsingadev, up on a hill in a fortress. From the Varaha Purana to the west of Mathura, at a distance of 2 yojanas, a yojana is 8 miles, so 16 miles, is Govardhan, the topmost holy place. Anyone who performs its parikram will never have to take birth in this world again. Krishna advised himself, this was part of the Govardhan Puja, this is why we circumambulate the hill as part of the program. After having stopped the Indra Yagna, Krishna advised the inhabitants of Vrindavan to worship Govardhan Hill, which they did. When the Anakut ceremony of offering food to Govardhan was complete and the Brajabasis had offered arti, Krishna led all of them on parikram around Govardhan Hill. From that time onwards, the sacred parikram of Govardhan Hill has continued, and even today it is still being performed by devotees of Lord Krishna. So there's a village called Anayor, where the hill is at its highest, and that is the place where the offerings were made. Anayor means, give me more, give me more. Govardhan Hill is a parikram of about 14 miles, 23 kilometers, and can take 5 to 6 hours to complete if one walks at a brisk pace. People from all over India and the world visit Braja in order to perform Govardhan Prikram. On auspicious occasions like Guru Purnim, Purushottam Mas, or today Govardhan Puja, over 500,000 people go around the sacred hill. So this book is 25 years old, and I think the number has increased since then. The 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan regularly perform parikram at Govardhan Hill, especially Sanatan Goswami, who was so determined that into his 70s he was performing every day Govardhan Prikram and a larger diameter which would encompass other sacred places. And Krishna himself had to dissuade Sanatan Goswami and could only be successful in doing so by giving him a very, very special Govardhan Shila, which had his footprint in it, and that Shila is now there on the altar of the Radha Damodar Mandir in Vrindavan, and one can see. And it's understood that by doing the Prikram of the Radha Damodar temple, which then one gets the benefit going around 7 times. Or is it 4 times? I'm forgetting. Anyway, a certain number, one gets the same benefit as doing the entire Govardhan Prikram, the same benediction that Lord Krishna gave to Sanatan Goswami, how to do Prikram of this particular Shila. Other great personalities who performed Govardhan Prikram were Madhavendra Puri, Advaita Acharya, Lord Nityananda, Vallabhacharya, Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivasacharya, Raghava Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, and of course Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who himself, upon seeing Govardhan Hill for the first time, fell down like a stick and began embracing one of the rocks. On touching the rock from Govardhan, the Lord began to shed tears of love and almost became mad due to transcendental ecstasies. Rupa Goswami says that each footstep taken in Braja is equal to visiting all other holy places and performing all other Vedic sacrifices. Srila Prabhupada spent 15 months continuously in New York City from October 1965 through January 1967. So he writes in his diary about being alone here in New York City without devotee association for Gaur Purnim of 1966, that he takes solace in being away from the Holy Dham because he is fixed in executing the order of his spiritual master. So Srila Prabhupada, he emphasized and demonstrated by his personal example that to give one's life to Krishna consciousness by preaching Krishna consciousness is the best way to please the Lord. Harisari Prabhu, the other well-known personal servant of Srila Prabhupada, he was with Srila Prabhupada for the last 2 years, from 1975 to 1977, gave a very touching realization. When someone leaves their body, they want to understand what is the cause of death. And in the case of Srila Prabhupada, he said that his cause for leaving his body was that he wore his body out in preaching Krishna consciousness. So our position outside, seemingly outside the holy Dham, is different in many ways. Perhaps most importantly, Srila Prabhupada has created devotee association for all of us to take advantage of. Srila Prabhupada in his last days said, "My spiritual master, he departed early," and he used this heavy word because he was disgusted with his disciples because they failed to follow his instruction. Whereas I very much like your company. And the devotee, I forget the devotee giving the memory, but how Prabhupada liking our company? We're just neophytes. Tamal Krishna Maharaj had a dream. This is early on in the Los Angeles days, 1970, 1969, and he reported to Srila Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada was giving a report to Lord Krishna about how the preaching was going, and seemingly Prabhupada had gone to this Goloka Vrindavan and describing how fallen everyone is in this Kali Yuga, but the one qualification of his disciples is that they take my words with 100% faith, without any doubt, and execute my instructions to the best of their ability. And Prabhupada said, yes, this is the position. So the need is overwhelming to give Krishna consciousness, not just to the people, but to every living entity. Prabhupada said this Krishna consciousness movement is meant to save every living entity in the universe. So as Srila Prabhupada sacrificed, he told to one older lady he was preaching to prior to the establishment of ISKCON that I am not happy here in your very great New York City. I miss my most sacred place, Vrindavan. I would be most happy there without any care, but no, I am duty bound by my superior. I have some message for you people. So Prabhupada taught us to enter into the spirit of, as Advaita Acharya told to Lord Chaitanya after he played the trick on him, that yes, this is the bank of the Yamuna. The Ganges, as it flows down after the Yamuna comes into the Ganges at Allahabad, so it's taken that the Yamuna is on the northern side of the Ganges. There is the Bay of Alaska where the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean meet. And the Pacific Ocean has much less salt in it, and it's one of the amazing things of nature. There's a demarcation line that they don't mix. Look it up. So anyway, yes, Advaita Acharya and Lord Nityananda have tricked me. And Advaitacharya's response to his ruse being uncovered was, wherever you are, that is Vrindavan. And Prabhupada says the devotee can create the Vrindavan atmosphere by his pure and empowered preaching. Because the pure devotee of Krishna lives in Vrindavan and nowhere else. So Srila Prabhupada, there's the memoir of Shyamasundar, who's the ultimate rhinoceros chaser. After Prabhupada had installed Sri Sri Radha London Ishvar, Shyamasundar began to get bored and said, "Where's the next rhinoceros?" But actually, George Harrison had asked him to come move into his newly acquired mansion, Friar Park, in a similar way that John Lennon did, but it was a much more favorable atmosphere. And Prabhupada said, "Yes, you should go. You are the mentor of George Harrison, and you should guide him in his Krishna consciousness." And that's when his immediate post-Beatle breakup solo albums were coming out, which so many devotees were influenced by. I know one immediately come to mind, one Gauradas, Prabhupada's disciple, who's in Canada. Those solo albums of George Harrison caused him to join the Krishna consciousness movement. But then, of course, later in that year, Prabhupada asked Shyamasundar, Malati, Yamuna, Guru Das, etc., and others to come and be part of the World Sankirtan Party in India, which was amazing. Yes, so Shyamasundar, he understood Prabhupada's mood of expanding Krishna consciousness all over the world, and was very keen to use his talents and abilities in the service of the Lord in a very determined way. So we should be willing to do whatever it takes to sacrifice and to, so to speak, put up or shut up, actually put up, and not and do what is necessary to push on the Krishna consciousness movement. For us here, that means in this most important place of New York City, Prabhupada's personal Prabhupada Desh, where he spent 15 months continuously to found and establish the Krishna consciousness movement, to make, this is what Shyamasundar said, that he had given us Sri Sri Radha London Ishvar, which continued to be Prabhupada's favorite deities for the rest of his manifest presence here. And there's so many reasons, as we could say, as to why. But when the deities of Radha and Krishna that Prabhupada installs in the various important places, they embody the full manifestation of Vrindavan and all the holy places. So we're not losing anything by not being all packed up in the holy Dham, but in a sense we're gaining something very, very valuable. And Prabhupada had said of Vrindavan particularly, Vrindavan is inspiration only, our real field work is all over the world. And especially Vrindavan was, Prabhupada cautioned us very seriously, is meant for retired and renounced life. Those in lower statuses, they should pay short visits to Vrindavan, but should not stay for long periods of time, lest their material desires and false ego get the better of them and they create offense in the holy Dham, which is very, very risky. So this is a very, very glorious day. We'll mention one brief thing about Rasikananda Prabhu. This is his disappearance day. Rasikananda is the chief and most famous disciple of Shyamananda, formerly Dukhi Krishna Das, who was the Shiksha disciple, along with Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivasacharya, the famous trio credited with the first book distribution on the order of Jiva Goswami, renamed miraculously by Srimati Radharani herself, Shyamananda. So he's primarily credited for spreading the movement in Orissa. So if you look on ISKCON Desire Tree, there's a very full, good biography everyone can read. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Govardhan Puja Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Haribol.